Hi friends, I hope you have a wonderful day, and this time I'm gonna be reacting to the tumultuous tale of Mahaveer Raghunathan. I really hope that I said it right. I really tried. So yeah, thank you for suggestion, and yeah, let's just start.
Let me start off, if I may, with Eddie the Eagle. To those unfamiliar, this man is legendary through the events that transpired at the 1988 Winter Olympics. These have been well documented and has even been made into a movie, but it wasn't because he won any silverware. Finishing last in both the 70 and 90 metre ski jump events, by some margin, the International Olympic Committee changed the rules to ensure such an embarrassment could never be repeated. However, through his bumbling efforts in the games, he endeared himself to the public, and became this weird sort of hero through his determination to never give up, even if he couldn't jump. The reason I bring this up is because 31 years later, we have a very familiar story.
Really?
So let's begin with the basics. Mahaveer Raghunathan was born in Chennai, India, and Chennai is a prominent area of India when it comes to motorsport. It is the location of the Madras Motor Race Track, one of India's most used race facilities, and is the base for the MRF Challenge Summer Series, where an array of drivers from around the world have come to prove their worth. And Chennai was the birthplace of former F1 driver Karun Chandok. So he was born into a good area in that regard, but he supposedly didn't come from a background of wealth, which, as we'll find out later, makes about as much sense as Romain Grosjean's crashes. But nevertheless, as all of us racing fans have, he fell in love with the sport where competitors drive in circles all day long in overpriced coffins. So after competing in karts for
Yeah, overpriced coffins. That sounds a bit right.
few years where he managed several race finishes, Raghunathan made his racing car debut in the JK Racing Asia Series, which was basically a continuation of the Asian Formula BMW Series, in the final round of the 2012 championship. At the age of 13, he was the youngest driver on that grid, but his results weren't too good. Certainly nothing indicative of being a Formula 1 star in the making, but it was his car racing debut, so we'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that one. The following year, he would finish 6th in the MRF Challenge 1600 Series, and made an appearance in the Formula Masters China Series toward the end of the year. The results were not that great here either, being among the slowest drivers in that final round in Shanghai. And whilst yes, he was significantly younger than a lot of the field, there was nothing to demonstrate that he was worthy of being a Formula 1 talent here still. For 2014, Raghunathan would make the transition into the Italian Formula 4 Championship, competing full-time with F&M Racing. Whilst he was initially quite a bit slower than his teammate, Mattia Drudi, he would edge closer towards season's end, but as a whole he was still about 1.5 to 2 seconds off the pace on average throughout the season. Although in that final round he came in 6th in all 3 races, and was more on the pace in this round than any of the rounds that came beforehand, being only half a second off his teammate Drudi, and he did beat his other teammate Giovanni Altoe on a regular basis, although the results for that guy were about as hopeless as a dyslexic in a spelling bee. Next year he would move up into the Formula 3 category,
Oh, he's trying to be funny. Oh, okay.
with part-time appearances in the Formula Renault Alps, Euro Formula Open Championships, competed in the Masters of Formula 3, and competed full-time in the European Formula 3 Championship with Motorpark.
Between Raghunathan.
So let's start off with those 2 part-time
Raghunathan.
appearances, okay? In the Formula Renault series, he drove with Cram Motorsport at Spa-Francorchamps alongside Vitaly Romanov and Travis Jordan Fisher. Both of these drivers hung around the midfield for the majority of the season, with Romanov claiming a handful of podiums, but such fortunate results would not exist for our boy. Once again, he was about 2 to 3 seconds off the pace of his teammates, retired from the first race, and was the last of the finishers on the second race. In the Euro Formula Open series, he made a guest appearance at Monza, driving for Team Westtech. Even over the entirety of the weekend, Raghunathan was still a mile and a half behind his teammates, and among the last of the finishers in both races. In the Masters of Formula 3 event at Zandvoort, Raghunathan would be entered in with the Motorpark team, alongside Marcus Pommer, Sam McLeod, Nabil Jeffrey, and Sergio Sette Camara. Now those guys qualified in the low to high 31s, with Nabil Jeffrey being slightly outside with a 32.041. Raghunathan's best time was a 133.199, and throughout both the qualifying and main races, he would be the last of the although slightly saved somewhat by Pommer's problems in the main race to come home in 17th. So by this stage we've run through a whole bunch of nothing in terms of results. But hey, there's still more to come. The 2015 European Formula 3 Championship. Driving with Motorpark again, his teammates would be the same people from the Zandvoort race. I mean, he was the only rookie out of the bunch, but that excuse apparently didn't work for Lance Stroll. So, I mean, for the first couple of rounds at Silverstone and Hockenheim, Raghunathan really wasn't on the pace. It was sort of same old when it came to his position, which was at the back, and his times, which were measured in days. The third round at Po was where his pace, or lack thereof, would be evident. He was nearly 5 seconds slower than poleman Charles Leclerc in qualifying, and as a result of that, he was marked down as a did not qualify for the Po Grand Prix. To say this was a setback is a little bit of an understatement. His pace varied from round to round, but the results sort of remained the same, with his best result coming at the Norris Ring in the second race with 20th place. But the lack of success would not deter the young man, as he would sign on for the GP3 series in 2016, driving with the Koiranen team starting from Barcelona. But this would be his only race in GP3. The results were what you would expect. At the tail end of the timing sheets in qualifying, the last running car in both races, and noticeably off the pace from the rest of the field. So up until now, Raghunathan's career results have been quite consistent. Not in a good way though. I mean, you wouldn't run home to your parents with an array of D- on your report card, huh? And at this point, options were diminishing as he apparently was running sponsorless for a while, and hardly anyone would want to sponsor
Sponsorless?
a driver at this point who hasn't won anything at a professional level. But that's when the realization came through to Raghunathan. The rationale changed, and he pulled the plug on the GP3 venture after just one round. The reason for this, he had turned his attention toward the AutoGP series. At this point, the AutoGP series was already dying a slow death, and almost no one with any serious racing ambition ran in it anymore. After just one round in 2016, the AutoGP series merged with the Boss GP series, a championship which played host to older Formula 1 cars as well as other Formula cars from GP2 to Formula 3000. So there were some serious toys in this championship being run on some legit circuits. A perfect training ground, you'd reckon, for Raghunathan to get his hands dirty and prove his worth. The thing is though, the Boss GP championship isn't really that legitimate. For you see, the majority of the people who compete in this championship are people who have earned enough of a fortune to a point where they can afford to race these things. So it's much like the concept of gentleman drivers in GT racing. And so when you have a young gun who is supposedly racing professionally, going up against these guys, it's like competing against Gary Coleman in a tip-off.
What you talking about, mister?
But even then, Raghunathan still wouldn't be able to win the AutoGP championship, as he would lose out to Lewis Michael Dorbecker, who was the only other full-time competitor in the championship, might I add. Just for clarity, even though the AutoGP series died after one round, they continued running the championship and just utilised the Boss GP calendar to complete the series. Makes sense? Fantastic, let's move on. For the following season, Raghunathan would commit to the Boss GP Formula class, and would win the title. But only just. For most of the season, Johan Ledermeyer had won most of the races and had virtually dominated the championship, whilst Raghunathan basically picked up the leftovers. But after a no-show at Zolder and an effective withdrawal at Imola, Raghunathan secured the Formula Class title by 16 points. He made a one-off appearance in the Michelin Le Mans Cup in 2018, but nothing much happened for the 20-year-old in that season. That was until the 23rd of March 2019, when MP Motorsport announced that Raghunathan would be driving alongside Jordan King in the 2019 FIA Formula 2 Championship. Now, we all know what happened, as the adventures that he endured in this season are well documented for a number of reasons. But to put his career into retrospect at this point, he had no wins, or podiums, or fastest laps, or pole positions in any professional category up to this point. Or at least until he entered the Boss Series in 2016, which was
Just oof.
primarily for gentleman drivers. I'm not purposely trying to drag the man down, but this is not indicative of someone who is a world-class driver now, huh? It also raised the question of how one got the money to get that MP seat. The word around was that he was being sponsored by an Indian car company. Whatever one it was must have seen something that not a lot of us saw. But hey, let's get back on track and let's discuss Mahaveer Raghunathan's Formula 2 campaign. Raghunathan completed pre-season testing with MP Motorsport with Richard Verschoor in the other car. Now, let me just start off by saying, Verschoor is someone someone who is definitely worthy of the Formula 2 seat. And this was before his Macau victory. But hey, I guess it all comes back to the thing that plagues motorsport now, huh? Times and testing don't really mean anything, programs vary, therefore so will the times. So let's just move on to the regular season now, shall we? At the opening round in Bahrain, Raghunathan was the slowest driver in both free practice and qualifying, being half a second down on Tatiana Calderon, who was second to last. After multiple excursions off the track throughout the weekend, not too many people would have been pegging him as a title contender. There wasn't much to write home about in regards to his performances in either the feature or the sprint race, but there was something of note. After being slow enough to be lapped in the sprint race, and after eventual race winner Luca Giotto took the checkered flag, Raghunathan decided to complete another lap at full speed. Now, we may laugh at this, but consider for a moment that marshals will almost certainly be over the fence at this point, under the assumption that anything that passes the finish line is just cruising. It all of a sudden doesn't start to be funny anymore. The stewards didn't see the funny side of this either. They imposed a 10-place grid penalty for the next race, which was a little bit pointless, and handed out the first of what will be many penalty points. The next round in Baku, and if you've been around this website, I don't know if you've heard of it before, it's called YouTube, you've probably seen what I'm about
No, what is YouTube?
to dish out here. During free practice, Raghunathan got stuck at the escape road in turn 3. Now, a normal driver at this point would be able to navigate their way out of here with relative ease.
Good job.
If you can't do that, which to be fair is a possibility, then shut off the engine before you cook the damn thing. But instead, we were treated to this.
This will be a really bad joke, but am I watching like how women park a car? When I see this, usually, what? Are you really, are you really a driver? What is happening? Sorry. Almost. What the F? Seriously, you don't know how to steer wheel. What the F? Seriously, someone just needed to go and show what direction do you need to turn the wheel? What a shit show! What the heck? No. What? No.
So after 2 minutes of some of the most helpless driving in Formula 2 history, Raghunathan emerged from the escape road with a roasted engine, which didn't exactly impress his team members. Qualifying was about as disastrous as you'd expect. He was about 2.6 seconds slower than Calderon, who was the second slowest driver, and 6.2 seconds slower than poleman Nobuharu Matsushita. That deficit is alarming, and it's not even the case with the team either. Teammate Jordan King was over 5 seconds faster. In fact, the gap between himself and Calderon was larger than the deficit from first place to 17th place. But it's not as if qualifying really mattered for him, because he would be forced to start from the pit lane after he missed the weighbridge in free practice. Thing is though, is that the Baku race is one of attrition. So long as you can keep your car out of the wall or other drivers, you should be on for a decent result. And of course, Raghunathan managed to stay out of trouble, whilst 7 cars failed to finish, and aided too by the misfortunes of Matsushita and Ralph Boschung. Raghunathan came across the line to record 11th place. Now, throughout the races, his race pace was pretty terrible. I mean, I'll lend some perspective here. In the feature race, teammate Jordan King's best time was a 1:57.616. Raghunathan's best time was a 2:03.946. But of course, the trouble didn't end there, for once again he was penalised, this time for passing Guang Yu Zhou before the control line at the safety car restart during the sprint race. 5 seconds were added to the race time, which remarkably had no effect on his final result, and he finished in 13th place, the last finishing driver. The next round in Barcelona was relatively quiet for him, although he was way too close to being lapped in the feature race. I probably don't need to tell you how he was pace-wise, although there was something somewhat amusing. That weekend also hosted the opening round of the Formula 3 Championship. Slower cars than Formula 2, much slower. But the fastest lap in the Formula 3 sprint race was set by Gihan Daruvala, a 1:34.711. Raghunathan's fastest time in the Formula 2 sprint race was a 1:34.971. So we're only 3 rounds in.
Oh.
And the next round is Monaco. After almost failing to qualify for the event, saved only by the group qualifying format to combat the congestion issues on the slightly oversized go-kart track, Raghunathan had a horrid time, finishing 2 laps down in the feature race and 1 lap behind the nearest car. Granted, there was a timing issue in that feature race where half the grid was put a lap down for no good reason, but that wasn't before some of the worst driving I have ever seen in my life. After holding up Jack Aitken by cutting the chicane and weaving all over the place, Raghunathan punted Aitken at the hairpin, putting him out of the race, which would have hacked off Aitken just a little bit, as he was in the title race up to this point. And just earlier in qualifying, Raghunathan was pulling the same tricks as what you just saw in this race. This of course meant that a drive-through penalty was issued, but a 20-second time deduction was undertaken instead after he didn't serve said drive-through. And by now, more penalty points were starting to rack up. For the sprint race, Raghunathan had managed an incredible start and passed several drivers, but there was a reason for that.
Does he knows what he's doing? And why is he here?
I seriously don't know what to make of this. Talk about not giving a shit. But his race would only last a further 6 laps when Luca Giotto took him out of the race at the hairpin. Giotto was penalised for this.
Maybe someone needed to take him out a bit quicker. Oh my.
But Raghunathan was also penalised for his tomfoolery at the start of the race. A 3 grid drop penalty was issued for the next race at Paul Ricard. Qualifying was par for the course, over 5 seconds slower than poleman Kamara, and whilst he would achieve his best result to date in the feature race, he was penalised again, this time for virtual safety car infringements. 15 seconds would be added onto his race time, and as well as that, more penalty points. Now, with penalty points, once you've amassed 12 during the course of a season, you will be issued a ban for the following event. And after collecting 9 penalty points with his shenanigans during the race, Raghunathan would be issued a ban for the next round after he had racked up 12 penalty points in total. There was some speculation as to whether or not he would actually return after said ban, given the nature of how his season had gone, but sure enough, Rags was back on the grid for Silverstone. In an interview with the Checkered Flag, Raghunathan stated he had learned from his mistakes and was willing to respect the rules more. He was also looking forward to this event, saying that the fast-flowing nature of the
Like, I understand rules are rules, but like, hey, there is some moments where you could try to jungle with them, but not like in his way, you know?
the circuit suited him, and that he had prior knowledge of the circuit, having driven there in F3. So perhaps this was an opportunity to hit the ground running and demonstrate his worth. No. The results were what you'd expect, and this was the same case in Hungary, where he would qualify at the back and stay there during the races. Raghunathan and his teammate Jordan King were reprimanded in Spa-Francorchamps after failing to slow down during qualifying for the yellow flags, and were both handed 3-place grid drops during the event. Of course, we all know what happened during the feature race, and no race results were recorded that weekend. The next round in Monza had a lot of emotional weight to it, after the horrible injuries to Juan Manuel Correa and the tragic death of Antoine Hubert. But, as has always been the case with motor racing, and for however callous it may seem, the show went on. For Raghunathan, nothing changed on the pace front, but after a string of unfortunate events befell the drivers up and down the grid, Raghunathan finished in 10th place to record his first points in Formula 2. And hey, kudos. Yeah, there were people that struck problems and put him out of the race, but you still got to keep your nose clean in the end to get the points. So hey, that's legit. In the next race, he started 10th, but fell down to 13th place. Not too much to report on in that race, so let's head on to the next round in Sochi. He was once again miles off the pace, was last in qualifying, and in both races. However, he was again penalised for track limit breaches. Now keep in mind, this is all still adding to the penalty point total, and this would come back to bite him in the final round in Abu Dhabi. During the practice start procedure, you're normally meant to allow the drivers ahead of you to go off before you initiate your own one. Instead, Raghunathan started before the two ahead of him were even underway. Now that's a pretty dangerous thing to do. If you collide with stationary vehicles, as we've seen many times in motorsport, it can go pretty bloody wrong. But of course, he didn't slow down once it was obvious that it was a mistake. He just carried on. So unsurprisingly, the stewards were pretty animated about this. He then tried to claim that the driver ahead of him was rolling, which was the biggest load of bullshit since Lawrence Stroll said that his son got into Racing Point on merit. By now, Raghunathan had amassed a total of 24 penalty points, which therefore meant he was issued a second ban. But this wouldn't be a problem for Raghunathan, as race bans are issued for the event after which the penalty points are issued. So basically, he can only have been banned from the next round. But of course, this was the final round of the season. He could still race this weekend, and he did. But not before the stewards gave him an additional penalty of a pit lane start, which turned out to be a mixed blessing actually, because in the early stages of the race, Raghunathan had set the fastest lap of the race. But the celebrations were short-lived, as he would retire in what was a really unusual incident at turn 17 on lap 7. Now, as funny as it may have seemed,
I thought that he will kiss the wall.
to retire by virtue of just being himself, the more embarrassing thing was witnessing him trying to get out of his own car. Seeing this was about as painful as watching Sunderland trying to avoid relegation. His season ended with a 15th place finish, bringing an end to a rather adventurous career, with a best result of 10th, finishing 20th in the standings, and a grand total of 1 point. After this farce of a season...
A point! Yee-hee! Oh. Oh my. Oi.
And the penalty point fiasco that resulted from it, the rules were amended so that if a driver gets enough penalty points in practice or qualifying, they'll be suspended for the remainder of that event, which is great, but the fact that the loophole had to be exploited in the first place is so alarming, to a point where you've got to question whether or not this guy doesn't give a shit about the rules or is otherwise that stupid. Now, I don't wish to put drivers down, and I realise how rich this sounds coming from a guy with a moderately successful YouTube channel, but we cannot afford to continue the charade of having a grossly underqualified driver at the helm of what is supposed to be the final stepping stone before Formula 1. Championships like Formula 2 should house the best of the junior talent across the world, and I know it sounds terrible to put someone down who is merely chasing their dream, but I am far more concerned for the drivers out there who do have the world-class ability required to extract the most out of the car but are unable to proceed due to the lack of funds than that of a driver who is in constant danger of not qualifying and a
Nope. Please stand by.
Sorry. A little bit too much passion. But my point remains the same. It was a crying shame that one of the entries on the Formula 2 grid didn't have a hope in hell of winning anything, primarily due to that driver. And before you start typing, can you drive better? Oh, he's more talented than you. Look, hang on, shut up for a second. I ain't saying I'm better, I'm just documenting his career and being honest about how crap his driving was. But my main issue was that MP seat was wasted last year. When Raghunathan was on the sidelines during his mid-year ban, Pato O'Ward was drafted in to fill the void at the Red Bull Ring. In his brief time in the seat, O'Ward was much closer to teammate Jordan King over the course of the weekend, finally lifting the number 17 MP Motorsport car off the back row of the grid. And over the course of the weekend, was gradually getting up to pace with his race time in the sprint race being only a couple tenths off of King. Raghunathan had almost an entire calendar year and was still just as far behind at the end of the season as he was at the start. But despite having a torrid time throughout 2019, Raghunathan would test for MP in the post-season testing at Abu Dhabi, leading to speculation that MP could house our Lord and Saviour for another year. Why? Why, God? But thankfully, Nobuharu Matsushita looks set to take that MP seat. As of now, there are no plans going forward for the young Indian, as he doesn't update his website or his social media and doesn't partake in many interviews. So this guy really is a...
So he just disappeared. He went AWOL. He gone.
about as secretive as the KGB. Now, whilst we all may laugh at him, and it's easy to do that, and he'll always have a special place in our hearts as the Lord and King of the motor racing world, from an honest racing purist point of view, I'd rather contract a serious strain of the coronavirus than endure another season of him weaving all over the place, cutting corners, getting lapped constantly, barely qualifying, receiving multiple bans throughout the year, potentially endangering other drivers through rule breaches, punting off other people, and in a constant struggle to get out of his own car. So, Mahaveer, nothing personal, but leave Formula 2 for the world-class drivers. And Sean Galal. But anyway, what were your favourite memories from Lord King Raghunathan's career? Drop a comment below, let me know. I'd also like to take the time out to thank Russell from Ireland, my legal counsel, of sorts. And of course, if you're going to the Australian Grand Prix this year in Melbourne, I'll be looking forward to seeing you all there. In the meantime though, keep it respectful, be wholesome, don't be a manus, even though I was one during this episode, but I mean, hey. And as always, I'll see you all later.
Oh my. I really didn't expect that he will say that he would enjoy Corona more than this guy in F2. Oh my. No. I'm kind of not confused, but like what he is doing there. Sorry. Was doing there. Like how you can't turn with your car. How you can't get out of your car. It's not like it's your first day. That already seems unprofessional and from if it's starting there, then it couldn't get any better. But yeah, I have seen like his pic, but I didn't know anything about him. So yeah, this was interesting. So yeah, thank you for suggesting this to me. I don't know why that was much easier to say like that, but okay. So yeah, I hope that you did enjoy this video, and if you did, please consider to leave a like and subscribe. And yeah, if you have other suggestions, please leave them in my Discord server, and take care. Bye.